Welcome everybody to another video of Ancient Greece Reloaded. Today's video is the continuation of the previous one, in which we talked about the lives of the 10 most desirable Hetairai, aka Courtesans of Ancient Greece. If you haven't watched the first part, watch that video first before watching this one. By the way, if you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so as to stay tuned for upcoming videos. 3. Lais of Corinth and 4. Lais of Hyccara. It is said there were two Hetairai who went under the name of Lais in ancient Greece, Lais of Corinth and Lais of Hyccara. The thing about these two characters is that they have many similarities and also shared the same lovers, which led many researchers to believe that both of them may actually be one and the same person. For instance, both shared the same lover, Hippostratus, and that both were stoned to death at the temple of Aphrodite in Thessaly by the locals, which are details that add more to the confusion. Lais, the infamous and much desired Hetairai of ancient Greece, was well known not only for her extreme beauty, but also for her wit and charm. Claudius Aelianus, a Roman writer and historian of the 3rd century, even went as far as to bestow on her the nickname Axe Head, owing to her sharpness and her cruelty. Although active in Corinth, Lais is thought to have been born in Hyccara in Sicily and was stolen away by the Athenian general Nicias when Hyccara was conquered by the Athenians in 415 BCE and its entire population was sold into slavery. Lais ended up in Corinth, one of the largest and most important cities of Greece, with a population of 90,000 in 400 BC, where she possibly spent her early years as a slave before blossoming into her famous beauty, which went a long way in helping her achieve status as one of the most revered courtesans of ancient Greece. We do know she kept company with notable men of high regard, intellectuals, politicians and philosophers. Aristophanes, an ancient Greek playwright, mentions in his play Wealth that she was kept for a time by Philonides, an Athenian poet who was a close friend of his and the philosopher Aristippus, who mentions her lovingly in a couple of his writings. The famous mad dog Diogenes of Sinope, an ancient Greek philosopher, and the sculptor Myron of Eleftherae are both known to have enjoyed her company, if you get my meaning. She had the reputation for being an extravagant, indulgent, costly asset. One example being that she insisted on having a perfume created exclusively for herself. Demosthenes, a Greek statesman and orator of ancient Greece, famously refused to be entertained by Lais after hearing the exorbitant amount of money she demanded. In her later years, it is said that she hooked up with a younger man, Hippostratus, and moved to Thessaly, where she was stoned to death by jealous locals and buried on the banks of the river Pinios in around 340 BC. However, there seems to be some confusion here, as Pausanias, the famous Greek traveler and geographer of the 2nd century ED, seems to think there was only one Lais, and states in his descriptions of Greece details about her story and life that support the argument that both Lais of Corinth and Lais of Hyccara were one and the same person. Lais of Hyccara additional facts. Lais of Hyccara was probably born in Hyccara, Sicily, modern Carini, and died in Thessaly. She was a legendary Hetairai of ancient Greece, said to be extremely beautiful, extremely charming, and extremely expensive. Lais of Corinth allegedly met Hippostratus when she moved from Corinth to Thessaly, and Lais of Hyccara is said to have traveled to Thessaly with him. Lais of Hyccara was also rumored to have consorted with mad dog Diogenes of Sinope, an ancient Greek philosopher who, by the way, lived and died in Corinth. Demosthenes, a Greek statesman and orator of ancient Athens, offered to pay 1,000 Greek drachmas for a night with her. Claudius Aelianus, a Roman writer, teacher and historian of the 3rd century, tells us that Lais of Hyccara was known as Axine, meaning axe head, for the sharpness of her cruelty. Lais of Hyccara died around 340 BC in Thessaly, stoned to death by the locals. The aforementioned facts support the previous argument, although not conclusive, that both Lais might indeed be one and the same person. 5. Thaïs. Thaïs was a 4th century Hetairai of ancient Greece and a favorite of Alexander the Great, the king of the ancient Greek kingdom of Macedon, and was most likely from Athens. She was one of the few Hetairai who was not a metic. When Alexander first met up with Thaïs, she is said to have been having a fling with Ptolemy I, the famous Greek general and companion of Alexander the Great. After the death of Alexander, Ptolemy became the ruler of Egypt and founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty, who turned Egypt into a Hellenistic kingdom and the city of Alexandria into a center of Greek culture. Athenaeus, a Greek rhetorian of the 3rd century ED, also tells us that Thaïs and Ptolemy had 3 children together, namely Lais, Alexander Leontiscus, and Irene, and that she may even have become a queen of Egypt, although some other wives of Ptolemy are stated as the official queens. Thaïs entertained Alexander throughout his campaigns in Asia and was first noted in history when, in 330 BC, after a wild drinking party, she gave a speech which convinced Alexander, who at that time was completely drunk, to burn down the palace of Persepolis. Other ancient writers seem to think that Alexander would have done the deed anyway, without encouragement from Thaïs, intending it as a payback for Xerxes, who burned down the temple of Athena on the Acropolis, which stood on the site where today the Parthenon stands. The date of Thaïs' death, or of who what became of her, is unknown. Some say that after the death of Alexander, she again hooked up with Ptolemy. As stated, what we do know is that Ptolemy had many wives, and that Thaïs was either an official one or in a quasi-official relationship. But her ending was most probably not a bad one. 6. Thargelia of Miletus. Thargelia was very beautiful, clever and charming. According to Plutarch, the famous Greek philosopher born around 46 AD, she was an ancient Greek Hetairai from the Ionian Greek city-state of Miletus, and was so seductive that no man could resist her. Said to have been married 14 times, although there is no evidence of with whom or for how long, Thargelia's suitors included Antiochus, the king of Thessaly, and Cyrus the Great, who was a Persian conqueror and founder of the First Persian Empire, for whom it is said she was a spy. She was a pro-Persian Greek, which did not go down well with the rest, as the Greeks and the Persians had been enemies for centuries. For instance, the Greco-Persian Wars, also often called the Persian Wars, started in 499 BC and lasted until 449 BC. It is said that Thargelia had the ability to draw out information from her Greek lovers, who were men of the greatest power and influence, which she then passed on to the Persians, and for this she came to be known as a conspirator and an enemy of Greek freedom. To the ancient Greeks her name became synonymous with traitor. She is said to have lived for a long time in Thessaly, where she successfully propagandized the Persian policy. Nothing much else is known about her. 7. Neaera. Neaera, meaning fresh one, was an Hetairai who lived in the 4th century BC in ancient Greece. Overall, it's not known where she was born, but what we do know is that the poor young girl was bought by Nicarete, a female madam, owner of a popular brothel in Corinth, who trained girls to be Hetairai. Nicarete would be calling the young girls her daughters. In order to increase the price, her customers would have to pay and lived with them in Corinth. She was brought to trial between 343 and 340 BC, accused of marrying an Athenian citizen illegally and trying to pass off her daughter as an Athenian citizen. If not for the prosecution speech delivered by Polydorus, no one would ever have heard of Neaera. When Neaera was around 12 years old, she met Lysias, a speechwriter, one of the 10 Attic orators of ancient Greece, and one of Nicarete's regular clients, who, in reward for Neaera's services, arranged for her to be initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries. Nicarete tagged along, of course. Around 376 BC, 2 men, Timanoridas of Corinth and Eucrates of Leucada, jointly bought Neaera from Nicarete, paying way over the going rate for her. When Timanoridas and Eucrates both married, they thought that it was about time to allow Neaera to buy her freedom. And so Neaera, accompanied by Phryne, a Greek from Athens, left Corinth for Athens, and with his help, and by using gifts and loans from her former customers, Neaera managed to buy her freedom. Things seemed to be going well for Neaera, until Phryne took her to a party given by the general Chavrias to celebrate his victory in the Bithynian Games of 373 BC, where she claimed Phryne made no move to help her when she was assaulted by the guests and slave of Chavrias. This was the last straw. She had enough of being mistreated by Phryne and decided to leave him and head for a new life in Megara, taking with her all of her possessions, including a few of Phryne's and a couple of maids. In Megara, Neaera met Stephanos, who offered to become her patron on the condition that she would return with him to Athens. Neaera's return to Athens resulted in her being taken to court by Phryne, who upon hearing she was back in Athens, begged her to leave Stephanos. She refused, and so he was out for revenge. Stephanos, who was defending her, claimed that as Neaera was a free woman, Phryne had no right to accuse her of anything. Phryne took his chances and went to court anyway. The tribunal declared that Neaera, charged of falsely representing herself as a free Athenian woman by pretending to be married to a citizen, was indeed a free woman, and that in addition to this, she was her own Kyria, aka mistress. This was an extremely unusual decision in a society where all citizen women at least had a Kyrios, aka master. However, there was a condition. She was to divide her time between the two men, Stephanos and Phryne. Second trial, against Neaera. Against Neaera is a prosecution speech delivered by Polodorus of Acharne, an Athenian politician, while against Neaera and Stephanos was said to have been written by Demosthenes, a Greek statesman and orator of ancient Athens. It is actually thought, though, to have been written by Polodorus himself. Stephanos had a history of legal disputes with the prosecutor Polodorus and was alleged to have arranged for Neaera to lure men to his house and then bribe them. He was also charged with illegally marrying of Neaera's daughter, Phanon, twice to Athenian citizens, therefore using both his wife and his daughter for personal profit. This speech is the only surviving record of the trial. The outcome is unknown, as so is the fate of Neaera after the trial. 8. Phenis. Phenis of Samos was a 4th century BC ancient Greek Hetaira, rose to fame after writing a manual on the correct way to go about courting another person. Her handbook was extremely popular even though people publicly condemned it, probably not because of the spicy content, but rather because it was written by a woman. In fact, the poetess Hieron of Samos is claimed to have defended Phenis' reputation by insisting it was not she who wrote the book, but the Athenian sophist Polycrates. Today, many scholars also agree that most probably it was not her who wrote the manual, but it was either written by another man or was the collective work of many authors. What little we do know of the writings of Phenis is that later authors had alluded to in their own works. Respectively, the terms Sapphic and Lesbian did not exist in ancient times, the way we understand it today. The two words derive from her name Sappho and the name of her island Lesbos, respectively. In her day, Sappho, whose works focused on the beauty of women and her love for girls, was regarded as one of the greatest lyric poets and was given names such as the 10th Muse and the Poetess. Sappho's poetry is still considered exceptional and continues to influence writers. But it had nothing to do with lesbian love the way we do understand it today. Be careful, guys. Phenis' book looked at the art of love systematically, beginning with the technique of seduction and included positions, ancient Greek aphrodisiacs, how to rid oneself of an unwanted pregnancy, and the beneficial uses of cosmetics. It has been rumored that the writings of Phenis were well known throughout classical antiquity. They may have even influenced Ovid's Ars Amatoria, aka The Art of Love, an instructional series of 3 books by the ancient Roman poet Ovid, written in 2 AD. On the other hand, many modern academics consider Phenis to be a fictional character, used as a pen name by a variety of erotic writers. Unfortunately, this is as much as we do know about her. 9. Gnathaena. Gnathaena was a 4th century BCE Athenian Hetaira, envied for her luxurious symposiums and witty conversations. Her status as a Hetaira gave Gnathaena a privilege of education, the right to control her own finances and to host banquets and symposiums of her own that were attended by the most prestigious and wealthy men of ancient Athens. To be certain that her parties would go down in history as the most successful in all of Athens, Gnathaena wrote a code of conduct for proper manners at her symposiums, called Rules for Dining in Company. Some historians believe this was confirmation as to how well respected she was, and an indication of the higher status designated to Hetairai. Gnathaena made her own rules and was obliged to no man, as were most Athenian women of her day. Gnathaena's rules stated which men were allowed to attend the symposiums she hosted, as well as how the men should conduct themselves once they were there. According to Athenaeus, an ancient Greek orator, her most notable lover was Diphilus, an Athenian new comedy playwright, whom Gnathaena loved to ridicule, though he is described as a man above her other lovers beloved by her. Gnathaena is known to have had many daughters, who helped their mother host her symposiums and entertain the guests. One of Gnathaena's daughters also had a daughter named Gnathaena. Athenaeus alludes to Gnathaena's daughters and granddaughter also being courtesans known for their witty remarks, as Gnathaena was before them. Also Gnathaena had a son with Andronicus, a tragic actor. 10. Archianassa of Colophon. Archianassa of Colophon, Colophon being an ancient city in Ionia, was an Hetaira of a certain age, living in Athens in the late 5th century BC. As stated, what makes Archianassa stand apart from the other young Hetairae was the fact that she was older, much older. According to biographies about Plato, even though mature, Archianassa still had the looks, charm and seductiveness with which to magnetize man. Apparently Plato, the famous philosopher, as a young man had fallen under her spell and was deeply in love, if not obsessed with her. Diogenes Laertius, in his biography of Plato, quotes a love poem, a 4-line epigram, written by the young love-struck Plato to Archianassa. The same poem is also found in a Byzantine compilation called Anthologia Palantina, and although still addressed to Archianassa, it was thought to be the work of Asclepiades and not Plato. Most modern-day academics now accept that it was written by Plato. Unfortunately, not much else is known about her. To conclude, the topic of ancient Greek women is endless, full of mystery and intrigue, both in mythology and in ancient history. We have temptresses, muses, philosophers, wicked Greek witches, goddesses, and most importantly, the woman who started it all, Pandora, the first mortal woman on earth, the bane of mankind. Let us finish with the following saying: "It is better to be envied than pitied." Herodotus. That being said, remember guys to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, it would help us a lot. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for upcoming videos.